Good evening, everyone. It's your favorite host, Mike Krupa, again on the Votum TV channel. We are live broadcasting from somewhere in southwestern Poland. Yes, it's Lower Silesia to be more precise, next to the great city of Wrocław. And today we have a special guest, Vince James, all the way from Idaho, MAGA pioneer, American patriot, an all-around great guy. Vince, how you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Not doing too bad. Like I said, aside from the weather, before we went live, aside from the weather, everything's good here in Idaho.
Okay. I heard we talked before the start of the show that you actually got some snow finally coming there. How's that treating
Yeah,
you?
about a foot. It's like a foot of snow. We had a snow day yesterday for the kids' school, and now we're finally able to. The roads are plowed, but then we're supposed to get another storm, so kind of snowed in here.
Okay.
But it's a white Christmas. It's a
Perfect.
white Christmas. It's gonna be a white Christmas.
Perfect. Excellent. This is to my producer, or I don't know, to Vince, but I'm hearing myself in the background from about a few seconds ago. I don't know if I'm hearing some echo noise. Is this, Mr. Producer, something on our end or on Vince's end? Yeah, I'm still hearing
Yeah, I don't
this.
know
Okay, well, maybe
why.
it'll
There's a delay. I can hear a delay. All of a sudden you went live and all of a sudden there's this delay. Before we went live, it sounded fine to me, but
Okay, right. Well, maybe it'll cut down during the interview, I hope, but I can hear you. I can hear you. As long as you can hear me, that's good too. Okay, maybe let me just try one little thing here.
I don't hear an echo.
Okay.
So,
You don't hear an echo. Okay.
no.
Well, it'll be a double
I can
interview
mute
then.
my mic
Okay.
after I talk.
We can try that. We can try that. I'm still hearing the echo. Interesting. Okay. I hope our audience is not hearing the echo. But okay. Anyways, guys, going back into the main thrust of our interview, Vince, if you could just give us a brief introduction into how you became the Vince James of today, so to say. Where did you begin your political, social, and journalistic activism?
Yeah, so it was back in 2015 when Trump decided to run. I wasn't really interested in politics before. And my mom, she was conservative. She would always talk to me about politics. She would always say, "Well, Barack Obama is doing this to the country, and Barack Obama is doing that to the country." And I was young. I was like 20 something years old, and I just didn't care. Like I didn't care. I was sort of apathetic toward politics. Didn't really care about politics. And then Trump came along, and Trump didn't sound like your average politician, right? This is something that I knew that I didn't like. It was just boring to me. It was boring to me. It wasn't interesting to me, and it was boring to me at the same time. People like Ron DeSantis and Marco Rubio and these people just totally boring. Trump came along in 2015 and he started talking like like we talk. Started talking like a real human being. He said, and we were talking about this on my show earlier. He started saying like Mexico is not sending their best and they're sending crime and they're sending drugs and they're rapists. And he called for a total Muslim shutdown. And he talked about building the wall and having Mexico pay for it. And he called Rosie O'Donnell a fat bitch. And he said all these different things. And he would say the F word. And he would just he didn't sound like a politician. And the things that he was talking about, the things that he was calling for, the changes that he said that he was going to make are problems that a lot of people have been thinking about in this country but have never been addressed. And so he sort of addressed the unwashed masses, the unaddressed people of the nation. And this just got a lot of people, including myself, excited about politics and interested in politics, who were people who were never political before. And I've said this before. I've said that, Trump is the only one that could have done this. People want to prop up Ron DeSantis and some of these other people, but those people would never make people political who were never political before. And so I became political. I became interested in politics and I started doing a show. I actually did. I started my YouTube channel. I actually did this video where I predicted that Trump would get 504 I basically predicted the exact amount of electoral votes that Trump was going to get in the 2016 election. I can't remember what that number was off the top of my head. And people said I was crazy. There was people flooded into the comment section, said I was crazy, said I'll be back here when Hillary wins the election. Trump wins, gets the exact amount of electoral votes that I predicted that he would get. And basically, I predicted exactly how the states were going to shake out. And then all of a sudden, my channel exploded, and I had a Facebook page, and was on all these different platforms. And so that's how my show began. Eventually, I had a job with an ad. I was working for an advertising company, like a printing advertising company. I had a job on the side, but I would do the show at night when I got home. And eventually, because of some of the things that I've said in the show, I got called into the HR office, and they let me go. And after that, I wasn't able to get a job anywhere else ever again. And so I just went all in with the show, and it was very successful. And we've hit a lot of bumps along the road. Of course, getting banned from YouTube, getting banned from all these different social media platforms, getting banned from all these payment processors. And it seems like the banning and the censorship continues to this day, and they keep attacking me to this day. But that's sort of how this all began. It's been a wild ride. It's been a wild ride. And right now, it feels like we're living in a timeline that we're living in the best timeline right now, especially with what happened on Alex Jones earlier today.
Well, we'll definitely get to that. One of the things that I think was surprising to a lot of people in Poland when they were observing those epic years, 2015 and 2016, was we had this expectation that, the typical Republican candidate would usually talk about low taxes. He talk about, peace through strength. He talk about how much he wants to, make the world safe for democracy. And all of a sudden you have this guy, this barbarian, Trump, comes along. And there was this cognitive dissonance in a lot of people in Poland. Now, me having professionally studied the American paleoconservative, what my soon-to-be PhD is about, and, I'm an avid Pat Buchanan fanatic, basically. So I sort of had a feel for these things. I knew where Trump was coming from, but a lot of people expected Trump to be this, the second incarnation of Ronald Reagan. And a lot of people didn't understand, now, how could he be saying that, we're going to get along with Russia and we're going to get out of all these wars? They understood the essence of American conservatism to being something completely different than what it should be, or they did, because the media didn't tell them, and the publications in Poland that deal with political science and these issues never mention the fact that, the undercurrents of American conservatism were, that's just a big banner, but you have the paleocons, you have the libertarians, and you had something that was emerging in 2016, which was a clear-cut American, I don't know if you could call it that, Jacksonian nationalism. So how would you tell the average Pole, and some people are still asking the questions that, Trump was some sort of aberration and that we need to get back to this regular expectation of what we have an American conservative to be?
Well, Trump was, you talked about Reagan. You look back at the history of Reagan. Reagan passed a bunch of amnesties. He contributed to the destruction of California. While he was governor, he passed one of the first most liberal abortion bills. So, a lot of people say, well, Trump needs to be more Reagan-esque. Trump doesn't need to be more anything. Trump needs to be more Trump, actually, is the truth. Trump has gotten away from being Trump, and he's been tricked into believing that he needs to stop acting like Trump, and he needs to become more presidential. He needs to become more like a politician. He needs to be more eloquent when he speaks. He needs to be less off the cuff and more restrained. No, Trump needs to be unchained. Trump needs to be unrestrained. Trump needs to be more like Trump, because that's exactly how he beat 17 different Republicans. He didn't beat 17 different Republicans by acting like Ben Carson. That's the reason why Ben Carson lost. That's the reason why Ted Cruz lost. That's the reason why all of these different candidates that went up against him in the primary lost, was because Trump was the only one that was talking about these different issues. Trump was the only one that was talking about foreign wars and calling Jeb Bush low energy Jeb, and this is why, and your brother lied. And he was calling Marco little Marco, and Ted Cruz, he was saying the things about Ted Cruz. And he was talking about replacement migration and demographic change, which is something that everyone knows and everyone is starting to see in this country, but no one has addressed. Trump needs to be more like Trump. We don't need to go back to business as usual. because with business as usual, we never really got anything done. Trump is really the only hope. And it's not just for America, but you can see it sort of reverberate throughout the West. And people sort of jump on board. And, Trump is talking about a lot of things that no one has ever talked about. And people in Europe are hearing about this. People in Europe experienced the migrant crisis in 2015, where in Cologne, Germany, there was 1,000 rapes on New Year's Eve by migrants coming in through the migrant crisis. They're seeing their Christmas markets during Christmas time, which I'm sure is probably happening right now, have cement blocks be set up all around their Christmas markets to prevent people from driving trucks into their Christmas markets. They saw the Bataclan, what was it called? The Bataclan massacre happen in France. They saw the truck that killed, people in Nice, France. They're starting to see these things happening, and they're starting to put two and two together because it's people like Trump that are beginning to talk about these things. And because of Trump, you're starting to see other people start to talk about these things, like Tucker Carlson on Fox News talking about the 1965 Hart-Celler Immigration Nationality Act, talking about demographic change when it comes to that and what Ted Kennedy promised. A lot of the stuff that's happening right now, which is happening on Alex Jones and some of the things that they talked about, a lot of the stuff that is happening right now would not be possible without Trump. Millions of people that were not political would not be political, or that have become political would not be political without Trump. Trump created me. He created Nick. Nick Fuentes of America First. He created all of these different things and all of these different people and all of these different organizations just because of the way that he was talking, because he was being Trump. And so Trump needs to step away from the advisors that are advising him incorrectly, probably intentionally, probably people that want to see him fall and see him fail. He needs to step away from all of that and needs to become unrestrained once again. He needs to become Trump once again, because this is the only way that he's ever going to have a chance. And it's the only way that we're ever going to have a chance, honestly. So, yeah, I don't buy into the whole, well, he needs to be more Reagan-esque or whatever.
Right. No, I completely agree. But out of the people that are still sort of surrounding him, we know that when he announced a few days ago, Ivanka said she's leaving the pack. I'm assuming Jared is going to do the same thing. I mean, when you look at the first couple of months of his presidency, I mean, you had guys in there. There were a clear-cut divide appeared in the White House. And even, the liberal press was writing about it. You had the so-called globalists and the nationalists. So on the globalist side, you had, Steve Mnuchin, you had Gary Cohn, you had the Kushners, and obviously on the national side, you had Steve Bannon, and sometimes you just think Steve Bannon, but there's also Peter Navarro there, for example, at least the trade hawk guys, and a lot of guys on, some sub level sort of places inside the White House, which you didn't really hear much about. But I don't know if you would agree with me that after Bannon was outed after Charlottesville in August 2017, things started going downhill there in terms of people telling Trump that, no, you have to be more the politician and you have to restrain your instincts. Am I right in my assessment?
Yeah, totally right. Because we saw from 2018, 2019 on that he became, more of kind of what we saw during the announcement speech that we watched recently of Trump announcing that he was going to run again. And it seems like he's continuing this trend, which is something that we hope that he wouldn't, because there was a lot of things that he promised to do that, we hope happen. Like Schedule F. Schedule F was the promise that he's going to use executive powers to be able to get rid of this bureaucratic class that has survived multiple administrations and have been there through the Clinton administration and the Obama administration and the Trump administration, now the Biden administration. Schedule F, they talked about, getting rid of 50,000, 60,000 different these bureaucrats that are in Washington D.C. It's stuff like that. You see headlines from Axios that say Trump's second term, the plans for Trump's second term. You should be afraid of this. But that's not what we saw during the announcement speech. The announcement speech, people were leaving. Jeb Bush, who Trump once called low energy Jeb, called his announcement speech low energy. Even Jeb Bush noticed that his announcement speech was low energy. And so Nick Fuentes was Thanksgiving dinner with Trump, and he told him these things. And maybe this is the first time that Trump even heard these things, because Trump watches Fox News, right? And up until recently, Trump thought that his base was in support of like the vaccine, which they weren't. But he didn't know this, because what does he watch? He watches Fox News. Trump watches Fox News, and he gets a lot of praise, very little criticism of how he's running the campaign, of how he's running the show. They praised his speech. They said that this is the best tone. Lindsey Graham came out, the best tone. If he continues this tone, he's going to win. And so it was very important for this to happen, which we never thought would ever happen. For him to sit down with someone like Nick Fuentes for Thanksgiving dinner, and Nick to tell him all of these different things. And it's probably the first time he's ever heard of it. So it's we're gonna have to see how it goes from here. But like I said, we are living in like the best timeline. I mean, a lot of things that are happening right now, I never thought would ever be possible. And as they say, the best is yet to come.
Right. So I want you to explain or give us a rundown, because I've known you've been tracking this for a long time. By the way, to everyone watching us, Daily Veracity and Vince on Telegram, we have all the links in the description box. Go visit, watch, live, like, and support. We highly encourage it. We need to build this network on a global scale so that the enemy will be kept outside the walls and not inside the walls, as happened during the Trump White House. So my question, Vince, is the following. Yes, Kanye West has been getting a lot of press lately, and I think a lot of people watching us in our international and Polish audience, they sort of get the idea of what's happening in and around Kanye. And I guess there are two diverging opinions. Some people say that he's talking about the right things, but on the other hand, he's sort of unhinged and is getting a little bit cringy, and it might not go anywhere. Just tell us, what's your take on the whole Ye phenomenon, at least in terms of the last couple of weeks, where he's been talking about a certain group of people, so to say.
Well, that's Ye. I mean, he cannot be controlled. Ye cannot be controlled. He cannot be molded. He cannot be guided in a certain direction. And I think that he's proven that over the course of, however many weeks this has been going, however many weeks or however many months this has been going on every single interview, he wants to tell the truth. He wants to tell his story. He wants to say exactly what has happened to him. And the fact that he's pointing out the group of people that has been doing this to him, that's a no-go. That's the no-go zone for most of these media outlets. That's the no-go zone for everyone. You just can't talk about this one certain group of people. You cannot name this one certain group of people. You cannot say these things. You can say what you want about white people, and you can group them together. You can say what you want about other groups of people, and you can group them together to an extent, but you cannot say anything about these people. And this is something that Ye wants to break. And this is something that Ye wants to push. This is a limit that he wants to push. This is a line that he wants to cross and continually cross, because he views himself, and this is something he said during the interview with Alex Jones, he views himself as a cultural battering ram, just sort of barreling through these different things that you are, quote unquote, not allowed to do or not allowed to say. And he looks at this like, I want to free the people. I want to free the people from the slavery that they're in, from the mind control, from the mind slavery that they're in. He said during the TMZ interview not too long ago that slavery is a choice, and then he sort of expanded upon that. And this is what's happening to people. We are by choice slaves in a lot of different ways, and it's that sort of barrier that he wants to break through. And he's going to continue to test the limits. And I think that he went the furthest that he's ever went on this recent Alex Jones interview. And I was like speechless watching this interview. I was like speechless watching this interview. And the thing is that a lot of the things that he's saying is true, but you just can't talk about, you just can't talk about certain things. Because if you talk about certain things, your entire life is going to be ruined. If you talk about this group of people, he lost $2 billion because he talked about this group of people. And all it took was one phone call from a guy named Ari Emanuel. That's all. Just like with Mel Gibson, just like with Kyrie Irving and some of these other people that have went through this, You can talk about white people all you want and put the blame on white people all you want, but don't talk about this other group of people. So more props to Ye, and I hope he continues down this path.
More props indeed. How does Milo Yiannopoulos and Nick Fuentes fit in all this? Because when they did that stunt in Paris, I believe, with the White Lives Matter, that was with Candace Owens. And Candace is pretty fairly mainstream, but all of a sudden you're hearing that he's meeting with these total dissidents and outliers, Catholic Taliban, as some people call them, and they don't mind. I think Nick even approved of that at one point. Do you know of any details? I mean, how they met up, who reached out to who? Because it is an interesting phenomenon that all of a sudden you have Kanye with Milo and with Nick Fuentes, who's been even more sort of say bitch slapped by the establishment than Kanye to some extent. What do you think?
Yeah, from what I understand, it was Milo, just like with the setup with the Marjorie Taylor Greene, for him to set up the Marjorie Taylor Greene speech at AFPAC, which happened in Florida back in last February. It was sort of a similar situation with Nick sitting down with Trump. This is something that was like sort of happened by chance. Like they weren't even sure that this was going to happen. The story goes that Milo told this woman named Karen Giorno, who worked for the Trump administration, who has access to like Mar-a-Lago and so forth. Milo told this woman to go pick up Ye at the airport and drive him, which something like 70 miles or 75 miles to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump. This dinner between Ye and Trump was set up months ago, from what I understand. And so he convinced this woman to go and pick up Ye. Well, Nick was with Ye at the airport. And so they both get in I think there was one other person as well. They both get in the car. And I think halfway through the drive, Nick is talking. And then Karen Giorno says, Nick, what's your last name? And then he says Fuentes. And then she realized who she was in the car with. And she was thinking to herself, well, I'm going to kill Milo for doing this. And so on the way, she was making all these different excuses about how, you might not be able to get in because there was a dress code and you guys were wearing jeans and there's security there and they're probably not going to let you through. Well, eventually she got there. She realized, the mistake that she had made or whatever. And she tried to pull Nick and another guy away from Trump and Ye and said, well, you can sit down, Trump, go ahead and sit down with Ye, have some dinner. And I'll bring these guys to the bar. Well, Trump said, from what I understand it, Trump said, well, we're going to leave that up to Ye. We're going to leave that up to Ye to decide if you're going to pull these guys away or if he wants them to join them for dinner. And of course, Ye said, well, yeah, let's all eat. And so that's how that dinner happened. And also, from what I understand, it wasn't even supposed to get out to the public. It was this Karen chick, and I don't know if there was another source involved that leaked it to the press, leaked it to the public. Whoever that source was, I can't remember who the source was. I think someone mentioned a name before. The other source was, but that's how it got. It wasn't even supposed to get out to the public. But so that's how sort of that happened. It's just like, it's almost like it's fate. It's almost like it was fate what has happened this far.
Right. And well, we made our way to that. And as you said, things are happening so fast because we're still sort of picking up the pieces after the Trump dinner, and all of a sudden I hear that Nick Fuentes and Ye are going to be on Alex Jones, and this was live streamed on your channels today. I sort of picked it up in the middle. I was watching Japan beating Spain in the World Cup this evening. They won 2-1, by the way. So multipolarity has reached football, or as you Americans say, soccer, which is a good thing, I think. What's your take on what happened today in Texas with the interview with Alex Jones? By the way, if you haven't seen the interview, Posse audience, check it out. It's really epic. Everyone should see it. Vince, what's your take on what happened today in Alex Jones' studio?
I mean, all the limits were tested. All of the limits and the social limits, speech limits were tested during that interview. There was I think because there was a story that came out where Netanyahu was angry with Trump for having Nick Nick to dinner, Nick Fuentes to dinner, and Kanye West to dinner. And there was this story that came out, and so this was brought up during the Alex Jones interview, And Ye brought a net and a Yahoo chocolate milk bottle and said that was Netanyahu and was doing like voices. I think at one point they all put on masks and they were all talking. Like Alex Jones had a dinosaur mask on and Nick had the Alex Jones mask on. It was just like, it was the most wild interview that I've ever seen, but it was the best interview that I've ever seen. And throughout that entire thing, Ye was just testing the limits. He was just being the battering ram that he talked about and just destroying all of these social norms when it comes to what is okay and what is not okay to say. And he talked about, certain groups of people. I don't know what I can say on your podcast because I know you're in Europe, so I know there's the laws are different there. But he talked about this group of people, and he talked about this certain historical event, and he talked about the certain historical person, and said that he loved him, and he was awesome, and he had a great outfit, and and a lot of other things. And so Alex let him say whatever he wanted. Yeah, I mean, he just let him go off. And this is something that, because he went on Tim Pool's podcast, I think a few days before that, and Tim Pool was trying to control him the entire time. Before he had him on his show, he was saying, "Well, I just want to let you speak, and no one can control you." But then he tried to control him the entire time. So Ye just got up and walked away, and that something that Alex Jones didn't do, and Ye was allowed to talk, and Ye was allowed to say what was on his mind. And it was just it was just emblematic. It was just like a perfect version of free speech. And the media is freaking out, and they're probably going to freak out for the next few weeks or even longer than that because of some of the things that Ye said on the Alex Jones interview. But think of it like this, and Ali brought this up. It's just words. He's just saying words. That's all he's doing. Meanwhile, we have the ruling class just like murdering people, trafficking children, performing satanic rituals, and setting up pedophile islands. But what Ye did was just all he did was said words. And this is what people are freaked out about. It reminds me of how you have certain people in the media that are, you look at different social media platforms and you're blocked from doing this, or you're blocked from saying that, you're blocked from, doing this because it's harmful to the children. Meanwhile, you have what's promoted on these platforms are kids being like sexually trafficked, sexually exploited, drag queens, grown men. I don't even want to call them drag queens. I want to call them grown men in women's underwear dancing in front of children while they, hand them dollar bills. This is something that is acceptable. This is something that is not harmful to children, according to these platforms, according to these people in the media. And so Ye just said words. All he did was say words. And a lot of the words that he said were absolutely true. In fact, most were true. Maybe all were true. And we're starting to see the fallout in the media from that. I mean, it was awesome. I mean, that's my take on it. It was awesome. It was unmatched. You're never going to see something like that ever again, probably.
Well, anything that gets the Republican Jewish coalition going, and I'm pretty sure ADL is putting out a statement, repairing a statement, and Jason Greenblatt, who, by the way, attacked me a few years ago personally too, also on Twitter, calling me a far-right extremist. So I'm up there with Nick, Steve Bannon,
Jonathan
Trump, a lot of other good people. Yeah, he's a classic. He's a classic. I'm seeing these. It's an interesting pattern because I know that you're a traditional Catholic. I'm a traditional Catholic, imperfect, but nonetheless, we both love the smell of incense. We know what we're talking about when we talk about V2, not the rocket, but Vatican II, but they had the same destructive spiritual consequences, so to say. Nick Fuentes is a Catholic. Milo is a Catholic convert, also in the line of tradition, so to say. I'm getting this feeling that at some point, Ye is going to go all the way, and we're going to see him at some SSPX chapel out there in Middle America. What do you think? Where do you think this might go in terms of Ye's religious affiliation?
That would be awesome. That would be absolutely awesome if we see. I think John Miller recently got baptized as a Catholic. If we were to see Ye become baptized as a Catholic, I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but you're right, and I think there is something to say about that pattern. I was born, I was raised Catholic. My sister is actually a nun. She's a nun. And I've been Catholic my entire life, but it's always good to see people get baptized into Catholicism. By the way, speaking of Jonathan Greenblatt, I'm looking at a tweet right now. He says saying you like um, the big H, the guy whose name starts with H, love the N word, not the N word you're thinking, but the N word as far as like the Nazi regime, Nazis. I don't know what I can say on your show. You stop me if I can't say something because I know you're in Europe and
So
so it's hard to like.
let's push the envelope. Let's test the European Union. So
Oh, okay. Well,
maybe
saying you
without the
like
N word,
Hitler,
but
love the Nazis. He
yeah.
says, saying you like Hitler, love the Nazis, and spend all your time with a white supremacist makes one thing clear. Ye is a vicious anti-Semite. His comments today on InfoWars are not just vile and offensive, they put Jews in danger. So yes, another Holocaust is going to take place because of words. Because meanwhile, again, these people who are literally murdering people all across the planet and continue to do so. And it's they're just like totally justified because we have to protect ourselves. We have to protect the planet. We have to protect people from COVID or whatever.
Yeah, I think
Anyway,
we can send a link to our live stream in the comment section. And Jason Greenblatt's, or sorry, Jonathan Greenblatt's, Jason or Jonathan? I always forget what his name is.
it's
In Green,
Jonathan. Yeah.
Jonathan. Okay, we can put a link to our live stream on Jonathan's Twitter feed, and we'll say a big hello to him from Poland, or maybe someone from the Republican Jewish Coalition. Anyways, so right now, I think a lot of people in Poland were watching this from a distance. You're there. So we have Kanye is saying he's going to run. Trump already said he's going to run. And all of a sudden you have, obviously Ron DeSantis in the mix. How do you think this will play out? We know what Trump needs to do to be Trump, but what do you think the counterattack will be from the establishment? Because obviously will be a counterattack and somebody is going to be put out there to do as much damage control, so to say, in the primaries as possible. Where do you think we're heading on this?
Yeah, I don't think that really anyone stands. I mean, Ron DeSantis hasn't even announced yet, so we'll see if he runs. If he does run, I don't think he really stands a chance against Trump. The only way that he stands a chance against Trump is if Trump still continues with this sort of restrained way of running for office. Something that we do not recognize. This is not the Trump that we recognize. I think that Trump, in a lot of ways, picked up the playbook of Pat Buchanan. You said you're a Pat Buchanan fan. If you look at some of his books, Death of the West, Suicide of a Superpower, look at some of these books, you read some of these books, and this is a lot of the stuff that Trump is talking about or has been talking about is a lot of stuff that Pat Buchanan was talking about and sort of how he ran his campaign back when he ran for office. So the only way that someone like Ron DeSantis or anyone has a chance against Trump is if Trump continues with this sort of constricted, restrained, jailed sort version of Trump. That's the only way that Ron DeSantis has a chance against him. And they're trying to trick Trump into believing that this is the way that he should be. You see all these different media articles coming out about how, well, the Democrats gave money to MAGA candidates, to Republican MAGA candidates, because they thought that they would be easier to beat than some of the other candidates that were running. Or Lindsey Graham tweeting out that Trump needs to continue with this tone because this is how he's going to win in the primaries and win the election. He's being gaslit into believing that this is the way that he should act and this is the way that he should speak. And meanwhile, he has advisors probably telling him the same thing all around him, which he admitted to during the dinner with Nick, by the way. He said that my advisors think I should be more presidential so that I can pull. After 2 years of what we experienced under Joe Biden, after 2 more years of what we're going to experience, with it being even worse than what we experienced in the last 2 years, people do not want someone who's presidential. People do not want someone who's a politician. They didn't want him in 2015, and they don't want him now. People are suffering right now. Communities have been destroyed. People have been killed off. Their grandmothers and grandfathers have been ushered into nursing homes and locked away in nursing homes. They've had to watch virtual funerals on their laptops because they were told to be afraid of COVID-19. Their businesses were shut down. Their churches were shut down. Their their daughters are on OnlyFans, making a living on OnlyFans. Their sons are shooting up in the back alley. Their sons are committing suicide. Their fathers are committing suicide. You have inflation at 8, 9%. Gas prices are higher than they have been in a long time. People are spending thousands of dollars more on basic goods every single month. The country is an absolute disaster. The border's out of control. 5 million have crossed since Biden took office. They're talking about how it's going to be 10 million by the time he leaves office in 24, and those are just the ones that we caught. The country's a disaster. J6 people who went and peacefully protested the protesters, the J6 protesters are getting hunted down in the biggest investigation in U.S. history, double the size of 9/11, and 60-year-olds are getting thrown into prison for parading or picketing in a Capitol building. You go back to the Clinton administration. I think her name was Susan Rosenberg. She was a part of the Weather Underground movement, and she was caught with thousands of pounds of explosives in her car. People within this organization, this left-wing radical terrorist organization, were responsible for detonating a bomb in the Capitol building. Clinton pardoned this person. Meanwhile, people who walked in and took a selfie in the Capitol building are getting hunted down and thrown in prison right now. People don't want someone who's presidential. People don't want a Mitt Romney to run or a Ron DeSantis to run. People want a bulldog. People want a monster. People want Trump and how Trump was in 2015, but even more so than that, people want revenge. And so Trump really needs to get this message, and he really needs to hear it from people that he's blocked from hearing it from. And this is why it's like such a cultural, such a moment in cultural history, that that someone like Nick and Ye were able to meet with Trump at this dinner and be able to tell him that, because he's not hearing it from someone else.
Agreed. I think one of the other things that stands out, apart from the tumultuous years in 2015, is the fact that we're sort of, well, at least since February, a little closer, a little bit further, depending on the time of the day, on the brink of nuclear war with Russia. And my question, because I'm in Eastern Europe, a lot of our listeners are in Eastern Europe. How are you seeing the opinions shift in the typical Americans' outlook on the Ukrainian conflict? Are people starting to open their eyes that, wait a minute, something ain't right here, and that the amount of money that we're sending to Zelensky is just, I can't even find the word to describe how this wealth transfer is just, it's atrocious when it comes to comparing what is actually happening in the States and what the guy in the green shirt, pun intended, is getting from the American taxpayer. How are you feeling the vibes in the typical American view of the war in Ukraine?
Yeah, I think a lot of people's thoughts on that are certainly changing. I think previously, like even a lot of conservatives, especially older conservatives that don't have access to what I call the TV generation, like boomers and maybe even a lot of Gen Xers that like watch Fox News, and this is really the only political content that they consume aside from what they see on Facebook. They were even convinced by this. My uncle, who's a conservative, watches Fox News. He had like hung a Ukrainian flag outside of his house. And of course he took it down after he started to notice some things, but I went even further with that. And I was able to like kind of explain exactly how this Ukraine-Russia war came to be, and how it wasn't Russia who was the aggressor, it was NATO, it was America, it was the United States who was the aggressor all along. Going back to the fall of the Soviet Union and how we promised them that we would not expand NATO one more inch, because that was NATO's purpose. NATO's purpose was to contain Russia, was to contain the Soviet Union and to push back against the Soviet Union. And once the Soviet Union fell, that was when that promise was made, was that NATO would not expand one more inch. Well, every administration since then, this has happened all the way up to Russia's borders. And of course, if this were to happen to us, you can look at the Cuban Missile Crisis. If this were to happen to us, if Russia all of a sudden were to start to build bases in Mexico and Cuba and Venezuela or whatever, Canada, we would shut that down immediately. We would make sure that we would shut that down immediately. And so this is what has led, and this is what has uh, led up to this point. There was a deal that was actually made. They actually were going to compromise, and there was a deal that was going to be signed, but then this sort of just like all fell apart, and now we continue to fund them. We continue to send money to them. And this is, you have to remember, this is a regime. This is a government that we installed. We were the ones behind the coup, the Maidan coup that happened. And we were the ones who installed this government, who installed this leader, who, by the way, was an actor before he became the president. And in one of the episodes that he acted in, on one of the shows that he acted in, he played the president. And we installed them. And so this is like a total pro-Western regime, total pro-Biden, actually, leader of Ukraine in one of the most corrupt countries on the planet. Before this invasion happened, all of the media was talking about how corrupt Ukraine was and how corrupt Zelensky was. And that was just like completely wiped off the table after this invasion happened. And once the narrative went out to all these different media companies. And so, after however long this has been, and hundreds of billions of dollars getting sent, a lot of people had time to sort of catch up and sort of understand what's actually happening there. And now you can see the support sort of wane, and you can see the media coverage of what's happening over there sort of wane at the same time because support has waned. But this is how they trick you into wars. This is how they lie you into wars. And it seems like it continuously happens. I mean, it's been happening for a long time. They put out a narrative, they put out videos, they put out scenes, they put out pictures of what's going on because they want you to be in support of war. And if you're not in support of war, if the people's not in support of war, they stage a false flag. Pearl Harbor, Lusitania, Gulf of Tonka, the list goes on. And the new Pearl Harbor, 9/11. They make these things happen to get the U.S. in support, and it seems like the Americans just like continuously fall for this. But now with the rise of the internet and the easier access to information, as much as they try to censor this stuff, people are sort of starting to wake up to what is actually going on, what is actually happening. So,
thank goodness for that. Vince, you've been deplatformed fairly widely, but you're still active, although you're not on Twitter. So my question is, are you expecting Elon to put you back on? And what do you think of Elon in terms of Twitter in general? I mean, are we seeing something real happening here? Because a lot of people still have their suspicions that at the end of the day, he's going to cave. Some are saying, no, just give him time. And some people are saying, the criterion will be to have people like you, people like Alex Jones, return to Twitter. What do you think of Elon as the head of this social network?
I think it's actually going a lot better than I thought initially I thought like we were all going to be restored, we were all going to come back, and it was going to be sort of immediate. I'm actually surprised that he let Trump back on. I'm surprised that he unlocked Ye's account. I'm surprised that he let Andrew Tate back on. I'm surprised that he let a lot of these different people back on. And seemingly because of like a Twitter poll, he did this poll, and he promised like the ADL, he promised some of these groups that are really in control of information in this country that he would set up a team, he would set up a group of people that would really sit down and talk about the ramifications for letting people like Trump back on the platform. Didn't seem like he really did that. He just ran a poll and he said the people have spoken, and Trump was let back on the platform. Now, last week, he also ran a poll on his Twitter account where he said that he asked people if they thought that anyone who was permanently banned under the previous Twitter TOS and under the previous ownership of Twitter, should they be let back on the platform? Should they be granted amnesty and given another shot? And overwhelmingly, even more than what happened with the poll with Trump, overwhelmingly, I think it was like 70-30 people voted to give these people another chance. There are millions of votes. So the opinion on this, the opinion on free speech is overwhelming, but they have sort of tricked people into believing that they are in the minority, that their opinions when it comes to certain things that they are in the majority, that their opinions on certain things are in the majority. and that your feelings, your thoughts, what you think about crime, what you think about immigration, what you think about these things, demographic change and whatnot, you're in the minority. You're in the minority. And so therefore, you shouldn't even speak these things. You shouldn't even say these things. You shouldn't think this way about free speech. You shouldn't think this way about speech when it comes to online platforms like Twitter or Facebook or YouTube. But it seems like overwhelmingly people agreed that, yeah, you should give them another shot on Twitter, at least. Well, we haven't seen that happen. I was given an account, a Twitter account by a viewer of the show who had amassed over 1,000 followers on his Twitter account. I was handed over this account, and immediately, as soon as I took control of this account, the account was banned for ban evasion. So it seems like this hasn't happened yet, but we certainly hope that it does. I think it's going in the right direction. I just hope that it would go in the right direction faster. Restore Alex Jones, restore Nick Fuentes, restore these people on Twitter. If you're truly about free speech, you can't just like pick and choose like this. Give these people another chance. Give these people another shot.
Vince, I know you got to run, so I got to ask you at least one last question. Give us some words of hope to all the Polish listeners that showed up for our live stream today.
Well, I mean, from what I understand, and I don't really understand much because I'm not there. I'm not there with you. I'm not in your country. But from what I understand is, I go back, I think back to every time I think of Poland, I think back to that Catholic teenage boy who held up that cross and he was holding it up. This happened in Poland, right? He held up that cross and you see this in front of him, you see this army of godless, soulless individuals coming at him. And I think of Poland, I think of a Catholic country, I think of a conservative country where you don't really have, when it comes to support for all of these different things that we have in like America, in like Britain, in like, Canada. You don't really have that support isn't there as much in a place like Poland or really more broadly Eastern Europe. So I think that there's hope for you, but you have to sort of see what this can turn into. People in Poland have to sort of look to America, look to look to the West and see what can happen. What can happen if you don't check these things immediately? You've had a taste of it with migration, and you see countries beside you that have had a taste of this and are experiencing these problems right now. You have to sort of look to those nations, look to those countries to see your future. If you don't all of a sudden get the courage to stand up against these things, it's very important. It's very important because especially with demographic replacement, you cannot replace the people of a nation and still have the same nation. The nation will be destroyed forever because there are places in Europe that have survived a lot of things. They've survived ideological shifts. They've survived communism. They've survived, all of these different things. They've survived famines. They've survived wars, but you just can't survive a total replacement of the population. You can't survive that. You can never come back from that. You'll never come back from that. So on that issue alone, you have to look to countries like the US and see what is in your future because it's not good. It's not good. And you have to have the courage to stand up against these things. I know it's hard, but you have to have the courage to stand up against these things.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Vince James, our special guest today. Hope to have you on soon. Check out all the links that we provided in the description box. Give them subscribe, and especially Daily Veracity. Great text, great content coming out there from Vince. Vince, you have a good day. You still have daylight on your side. We're almost 5 to midnight over here. But as I said, hopefully we'll get to do this sometime in the near future. And let's keep up the good fight. God bless you and take care, and hear you soon.
Yeah, maybe we'll come out there and do something IRL. That would be fun. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you for having me on. And what is your channel by? What is your channel called one more time on YouTube?
We're Votum TV. This is the so-called heretic section where we talk about dissidents from the mainstream. So you're the third one. We had Doug McGregor on 2 weeks ago, Larry C. Johnson a week ago. You are our third guest, and we're just starting. We're on the beginnings our road, so to say, on YouTube streaming, but we're probably going to have to put a reserve channel on Rumble soon. But my Twitter handle is at mgkrupa on Twitter. You can follow me there, and let's network and let's keep the good fight going.
It's KRUPA, right?
KRUPA.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Best of luck to you, and definitely get on Rumble. That's for sure. Definitely back up all your stuff on Rumble.
And we will do that. Take care. God bless you guys. It was great talking to you.
All right. Take it easy.